What is the worst thing about online dating? Being catfished or scammed? No. It is when he sells you out on a cheap poker bet the night before college, tossing you into a group chat of hundreds of elites as a lowly prize. But my boyfriend made one fatal mistake. He thought I was a desperate sheep, completely unaware that I was the one already holding the noose tight around his entire future. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Maya Revenge Stories. We want to sincerely thank you for your continuous support, but unfortunately, YouTube has completely disabled our monetization, leaving us without the budget to keep the channel running, which means we will have to stop uploading new videos here in the near future. We are moving our operations to Patreon, so if you enjoy today's story and want to help us out, please consider joining our Patreon community to listen to even better, longer, and more detailed exclusive true stories with multiple emotional voice actors that we simply cannot make public on YouTube. You can easily join by scanning the QR code currently on your screen or by clicking the Patreon link located in the video description or the pinned comment below. Now, let us begin today's story of how I, Elisa Walsh, turned the tables on the elite. It was the night before freshman orientation at Aldridge University, an institution notorious for breeding the absolute wealthiest and most arrogant heirs in America. The air was thick with anticipation for the new semester, but my night took a drastic turn when my phone vibrated violently on the glass coffee table. I picked it up and saw that I had been forcibly added to a massive, secret Snapchat group chat. The banner at the top read, Alpha Sigma Elite. There were over 300 active members in the chat, and the notifications were rolling in like a landslide. At the very center of the chaos was Derek, my online boyfriend of 8 months. We had spent countless nights talking, sharing secrets, and building what I had allowed him to believe was a genuine connection. But tonight, his true colors bled through the digital screen. According to the messages, Derek had just walked away from a high-stakes poker table. He had lost a staggering amount of money, a sum he clearly could not afford to pay. He lost it all to a guy named Julian. Julian was a new transfer student, a phantom who carried a reputation so dark, lonesome, and cold-blooded that even the most untouchable fraternity brothers kept a safe distance from him. Derek did not have his cash to cover his humiliating defeat. So, in a desperate bid to save his own face, he tossed me onto the chopping block. He casually typed out a message to the entire fraternity, declaring that since he was short on funds, he was handing over his pathetic online girlfriend as the ultimate consolation prize. He proudly announced to Julian, and to the hundreds of laughing hyenas watching the spectacle, that I would serve as Julian's personal errand girl and fake girlfriend for the entire duration of freshman welcome week. To seal his grand joke, Derek uploaded a photograph. It was a picture of me, taken secretly from across the street a few weeks prior. In the image, I was wearing oversized, heavy-duty coveralls smeared with thick, black motor oil, standing outside a rundown, crumbling auto repair shop on the gritty edge of town. Derek added a vicious caption. He described me as a desperate, uneducated charity case from the absolute bottom of the social barrel, a leech clinging to his wealthy coattails just to get a brief taste of high society. He told them I was a pathetic gold digger who thought I had hit the jackpot by matching with him online. Within seconds, the group chat exploded into a frenzy of digital cruelty. That was when Harper made her entrance. Harper was Aldridge University's undisputed social media queen, a girl who flawlessly built her brand on toxic positivity and weaponized kindness. She sent a voice note, dripping with venom disguised as profound pity. "Oh my God. You guys, please stop being so harsh," she cooed into the microphone. "Just look at her. She probably has to work 3 exhausting jobs just to afford a basic bus ticket. It is honestly so heartbreaking that people have to live like this. We really should be gentle with the less fortunate, even if they are trying to scam their way into our exclusive circle." Her fake sympathy was the perfect catalyst. It incited the rest of the chat to drop any remaining filters. The insults poured in like acid. They mocked my cheap clothes, my supposed poverty, and my sheer audacity to breathe the same air as them. They called me bottom-feeding trash, a rat trying to sneak into a palace. It was a raw, unfiltered display of cyberbullying at its most elitist. Most girls would have broken down right then and there. Most girls would have burst into tears, blocked the numbers, and hidden under their heavy blankets, deeply traumatized by the sheer violence of 100 strangers ripping their dignity apart piece by piece. But I did not shed a single tear. I did not block anyone. Instead, I sat comfortably on the custom velvet sofa in the center of my multi-million-dollar penthouse, looking out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the glittering city skyline. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my sparkling water, my eyes calmly scanning the endless stream of digital abuse. They thought I was a helpless victim. They thought they held all the power in the palm of their hands. I tapped the screen and opened my keyboard. I did not write a lengthy paragraph defending my honor. I did not curse at Derek or beg for mercy. I typed exactly one sentence into the chat. A bet is a bet. See you tomorrow night. I hit send, smiled to myself in the quiet, empty room, and calmly turned off my phone. The truth about my relationship with Derek was a beautifully constructed illusion, but not in the way he or his elite friends assumed. For the past 8 months, playing the role of a desperate, grease-stained mechanic was an exhausting but entirely necessary piece of theater. Growing up completely surrounded by fake smiles, trust fund heirs, and transactional relationships, I deeply craved a genuine connection. I wanted to find someone who would love the girl beneath the grime, someone who did not care about the digits in my bank account or the heavy influence of my family name. So, I deliberately fabricated a life of poverty to test him. I wore cheap, frayed clothes, complained constantly about making minimum wage, and listened to him talk down to me, all while hoping he would eventually prove he had a real heart. Instead, he proved he was just another parasite. The absolute irony of his betrayal was almost too delicious to handle. While Derek painted me as an uneducated charity case to his fraternity brothers, the reality was violently different. I was a young technology prodigy. By the age of 19, I had already secured a position as an anonymous, top-tier senior data analyst at Axiom Nexus. For those outside the secretive inner circle of the tech world, Axiom Nexus is not just a regular company. It is a massive cybersecurity and technology investment conglomerate that essentially controls the digital infrastructure of half the country. What made Derek's arrogant little poker bet so incredibly laughable was his own pathetic obsession with my employer. For the last 6 months, his absolute favorite topic of conversation was Axiom Nexus. He would spend countless hours bragging to me over the phone about how hard he had to network. He boasted about the lavish dinners he had to pay for, the hands he had to shake, and the endless, humiliating brown-nosing he performed just to secure a miserable, low-level probationary internship at the firm. He strutted around campus acting like he had already conquered Wall Street. He had absolutely no idea that the poor mechanic he was treating like dirt held the highest security clearance in his entire department, with one single, effortless keystroke. I possessed the absolute authority to terminate his employment, shred his security badge, and blacklist him from the industry forever. Suddenly, the sharp ringtone of my phone sliced through the quiet atmosphere of my apartment. It was Riley, my best friend. She had obviously seen the leaked screenshots from the Alpha Sigma group chat. I answered the call, and before I could even say a polite hello, she exploded. "I am going to absolutely destroy him," she screamed through the speaker, her voice trembling with pure, unadulterated rage. "I am calling my family lawyers right now. Elisa, we are going to sue him for defamation, harassment, and cyberbullying. I will freeze his trust fund. I will make sure his entire arrogant family goes totally bankrupt by Monday morning." I walked over to the sprawling kitchen island, pouring myself another glass of water. "No," I replied smoothly, staring at my reflection in the dark marble counter. "Do not do a single thing, Riley." There was a heavy, stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Are you completely out of your mind?" she finally snapped, utterly baffled. "You are just going to sit there and let that pathetic loser treat you like a piece of human garbage? Crushing him with a lawsuit is way too easy." "Riley," I explained calmly, walking toward the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, If we destroy him with lawyers and family money, it is far too merciful. He will just cry to his fraternity brothers and play the victim. He will say the rich, vindictive girl bullied him. I want a revenge that is far more ruthless than that. I took a deep breath, letting the icy determination settle heavily in my chest. I am going to rip away his pride, his pristine reputation, and his entire future at the exact moment he feels the most invincible. I want him to stand on a stage, feeling like a king, right before I pull the floor out from under his feet. Let him enjoy his delusional victory for one more night. Riley chuckled darkly, the anger in her voice shifting to fierce approval. You are terrifying. Fine. Call me when the blood hits the floor. After I ended the call with Riley, my phone buzzed again with a new notification. I assumed it was just another toxic insult from Harper or one of the boys. But it was a direct, private message. The sender was Julian. He was the cold-blooded transfer student, the very guy who had supposedly won me in that disgusting poker game just an hour ago. I opened the text, expecting a crude demand or a mocking joke. Instead, the message on the screen made me pause. It was incredibly brief, lacking any of the toxic bravado of his peers. You do not need to humiliate yourself by showing up tomorrow. I never accept human beings as prizes. I stared at the glowing letters for a long time. That was the first unexpected twist of the night. It seemed Julian, the supposed monster of Aldridge University, was not quite like the rotten crowd he played cards with. He had a code, a twisted sense of honor hidden beneath his terrifying reputation. It only made the impending game infinitely more interesting. The Pioneer Pitch Gala at Aldridge University was an extravagant display of generational wealth and unearned arrogance, held in the grand ballroom of the Alumni Center. The room was bathed in the warm, golden glow of massive crystal chandeliers. Waiters in pristine white tuxedos drifted through the crowd, carrying silver trays loaded with crystal flutes of vintage champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and cutthroat ambition. At the very center of the room, standing beneath the largest chandelier, was Derek. He looked incredibly smug in a sharp velvet tuxedo, his arm wrapped tightly around Harper. She was draped in a sparkling floor-length designer gown that undoubtedly cost thousands of dollars, playing the role of the supportive queen bee to absolute perfection. They were basking in the admiration of their peers, laughing loudly at inside jokes and shaking hands with the university elite. Every few seconds, Derek would glance toward the massive, arched mahogany doors at the entrance. He was waiting. He was eagerly anticipating the moment I would stumble in, wearing some tragic, off-the-rack dress, or perhaps my dirty mechanic coveralls, ready to serve as the ultimate punchline to his cruel joke. Then, the heavy mahogany doors swung open. I did not make a frantic, nervous entrance. I walked in with the slow, measured pace of an executioner arriving at the gallows. I had completely bypassed the traditional, flashy evening gowns that the girls in the room were wearing. I felt no need to bare my skin or prove my beauty to a room full of shallow predators. Instead, I wore a heavily structured, custom-tailored obsidian black business suit. The fabric was a rare silk and wool blend that absorbed the light, cut with razor-sharp precision to fit my frame flawlessly. Beneath the tailored blazer, I wore a crisp, snow-white silk shirt, buttoned to the collar. My hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek style, and my heels clicked rhythmically against the polished marble floor. I did not look like a lost sheep. I radiated the cold, unforgiving authority of a corporate dictator stepping into a room full of prey. The effect was immediate and intoxicating. The lively chatter of the ballroom died out like a flame deprived of oxygen. The clinking of glasses ceased. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, wide with a mixture of confusion and sudden, undeniable intimidation. The crowd naturally parted ways as I glided forward, creating a clear, unobstructed path straight toward the center of the room. Derek froze. The triumphant, arrogant smirk completely vanished from his face, replaced by a pale, twitching mask of panic. He stared at the sharp cut of my suit, his eyes darting frantically as his brain desperately tried to process the stark contrast between the girl he thought he knew and the woman walking toward him. trying to salvage his shattered ego in front of his fraternity brothers. He forced a loud, mocking laugh. Well, Derek sneered, his voice slightly higher than usual, cracking under the heavy silence of the room. Look who decided to show up. Tell me, Elisa, how many months of waitressing salary did it take to rent that suit? Or did you just steal it from a charity bin? I did not even blink before I could respond. Harper decided it was her moment to shine. She detached herself from Derek and stepped forward, holding a brimful glass of dark red wine. Her face was twisted into a mask of fake, exaggerated sweetness. "Oh, Derek, do not be so mean," Harper cooed loudly, ensuring the entire audience could hear her. "She is clearly trying her absolute best to fit in with us." As she took another step toward me, her ankle miraculously gave out. It was a brilliantly calculated, theatrical stumble. She lunged forward, thrusting the glass of red wine directly toward the pristine white silk of my shirt, aiming to ruin my flawless appearance and humiliate me in front of everyone, passing it off as a clumsy accident. But I had spent my entire life navigating rooms full of vipers. My reflexes were sharp. Without breaking my icy expression, I simply took one swift, elegant step to the right. Harper grasped at empty air. Gravity took over, and she crashed awkwardly to her knees on the hard marble floor. The dark red wine splashed violently out of the glass, completely ruining the bottom half of her own sparkling designer gown. A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. I stepped closer. Towering over her trembling form, I leaned down just inches from her ear, lowering my voice so that only she could hear the venom in my words. "Your left ankle gave out, but you shifted your weight to your right heel right before you fell," I whispered in a smooth, chilling tone. "Your acting is almost as cheap as the fake followers you bought for your social media accounts last Tuesday. Do not ever try to play chess with me again." Harper. When I straightened up, all the color had drained from Harper's face. She looked up at me with sheer terror, her perfectly painted lips trembling as the reality of my threat sank in. I did not spare Derek another glance. I stepped around Harper's ruined dress and continued walking smoothly through the stunned crowd. My destination was a secluded, velvet-lined VIP booth in the darkest, most exclusive corner of the room. Sitting there, completely detached from the chaos, was Julian. He was dressed in a sleek, tailored black suit, calmly twirling a crystal glass between his fingers. I stopped directly in front of his table. The entire room held its breath, waiting for the infamous, cold-blooded transfer student to tear me apart. I looked him dead in the eyes, my voice ringing out clearly and confidently across the silent hall. "The prize has arrived," I announced, keeping my chin tilted upward. "How do you plan to use me?" Julian stopped twirling his glass. He slowly looked up, his dark, piercing eyes scanning my sharp suit and unwavering gaze. Instead of joining the crowd in their mockery, a slow, highly amused smile spread across his face. The cold, dangerous aura he usually projected shifted into something entirely different, something resembling deep respect. He did not insult me. He did not claim me as his property. Instead, Julian casually reached across the table, grabbed an untouched crystal glass of sparkling water, and slid it toward the empty seat beside him. He stood up smoothly, pulled the heavy oak chair out for me, and looked at me with a brilliant, calculating spark in his eyes. "Sit next to me," Julian replied in a calm, magnetic voice that cut through the tension in the room. "And watch the show." The atmosphere in this grand ballroom shifted as the real main event of the evening commenced. The drama surrounding the ruined designer gown was quickly swept aside by the university administration. It was time for the pioneer pitch. This was not just a simple school project. This was a high-stakes battlefield where the most elite students presented their startup business models to a panel of ruthless venture capitalists and corporate executives. The grand prize was entirely life-changing. The winner would secure a full-ride scholarship for their remaining years at the university, plus an initial seed investment of $250,000 to launch their company. The heavy velvet curtains parted, and Derek confidently strode onto the massive stage. He adjusted the lapels of his tuxedo, grabbing the microphone with the practiced ease of a seasoned salesman. the massive digital screen behind him illuminated with a sleek, minimalist logo. He introduced his project as a revolutionary financial trading algorithm, a piece of software designed to predict micro-fluctuations in the stock market with unparalleled precision. "Ladies and gentlemen of the judging panel," Derek began, his voice echoing powerfully through the state-of-the-art sound system. "What you are looking at is not just a program, it is my life's work. I have spent the last 8 months locked in my dorm room. I sacrificed my sleep, my social life, and my sanity. I stayed awake for hundreds of exhausting hours, fueled by nothing but cheap coffee and sheer determination, typing every single line of this complex code with my own 2 hands." He actually managed to produce a single, glistening tear, wiping it away with a practiced gesture of humility. The performance was nauseatingly perfect. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Down in the front row, Harper was clapping the loudest, completely ignoring the massive red wine stain on her dress as she cheered for her fraternity king. Basking in the golden glow of the stage lights, Derek let his eyes scan the audience until he found me sitting in the darkened VIP booth next to Julian. Derek flashed a wide, arrogant smile, his eyes filled with absolute contempt. He genuinely believed he had won. He believed he was an untouchable genius, and I was just the pathetic, uneducated punchline sitting in the shadows. I leaned back in my heavy leather chair and let a slow, icy smirk spread across my face. I reached into the sleek leather portfolio resting on the table and pulled out my personal tablet. It was a custom-built piece of hardware, completely untraceable and infinitely powerful. Julian watched me with silent fascination, resting his chin on his hand, not saying a single word as my fingers danced rapidly across the glass screen. I did not need to physically access the control room to ruin Derek. I was a senior data analyst at Axiom Nexus. Breaking into the university's tragically basic internal network was like taking candy from a sleeping infant. It took me exactly 9 seconds to bypass the firewall, override the security protocols, and gain master administration privileges over the entire audiovisual system of the grand ballroom. Up on the stage, Derek was in the middle of his grand conclusion, raising his hands to ask for the investment. I tapped the execution command on my screen. Instantly, the beautiful, polished presentation slides on the massive screen behind him vanished. The sudden darkness made the crowd gasp. The university technicians in the back of the room began scrambling, desperately pressing buttons on their soundboards, but they were completely locked out. A heartbeat later, the massive screen exploded back to life with a blinding white background, filled with thousands of lines of raw, complex back-end source code, scrolling rapidly from top to bottom. Derek froze mid-sentence, the microphone hovering uselessly near his mouth. He turned around, his confident posture crumbling as he stared at the giant projection. The rapid scrolling of the text suddenly stopped. A massive, glowing red box appeared on the screen, automatically highlighting a specific, heavily encrypted section of the code. The text was magnified so that every single person in the room, including the panel of wealthy judges, could read it perfectly. It was a deeply embedded digital signature, an unremovable watermark used by elite tech firms. The giant red text on the screen read loud and clear: "Original source code. Copyright belongs to Elisa Walsh, Senior Data Analyst, Axiom Nexus." The silence that fell over the ballroom was deafening. It was a heavy, suffocating quiet, the kind of silence that precedes a devastating explosion. The arrogant mask on Derek's face shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The microphone slipped from his trembling, sweaty fingers and crashed onto the wooden stage with a horrific, ear-piercing screech that made the judges flinch. The brilliant, explosive truth was finally laid bare under the bright stage lights. Throughout our entire 8-month relationship, Derek had been nothing but a common thief. Several months ago, I had intentionally left my work laptop sitting open on my living room coffee table. I had complained to him that it was a cheap, broken machine I bought from a pawn shop, claiming I did not even know how to connect it to the wireless internet. I then walked into the kitchen to pretend to make us dinner. What he did not know was that I was watching his reflection in the hallway mirror the entire time. I watched him hurriedly plug a hidden flash drive into my machine and copy the only folder left on the desktop. He thought he had struck gold. He thought he had stolen a brilliant piece of technology from a naive, technologically blind mechanic who would never realize it was missing. He had absolutely no idea that I had deliberately planted a dummy folder containing a beta version of my own personal trading algorithm, heavily laced with security trackers and my own digital signature. He built his entire future, his pride, and his fake genius persona on a foundation that I owned completely. The judges on the panel leaned forward, their faces twisting from admiration to pure, unadulterated disgust. The whispers in the audience began as a low murmur and quickly escalated into a chaotic roar of shock and outrage. Derek stood frozen on the stage, his face entirely drained of blood, looking like a deer caught in the blinding headlights of an oncoming freight train. His grand moment of triumph had instantly transformed into a brutal public execution. The chaotic roar of the ballroom amplified into a deafening storm of outrage. The wealthy venture capitalists on the judging panel were furiously scribbling notes, shaking their heads in utter disgust. Up on the stage, Derek was hyperventilating. His eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for a lifeline in the sea of angry faces. He grabbed the spare microphone from the podium, his hands shaking so violently that the high-pitched feedback squealed through the massive speakers. "It is a hack," Derek stammered loudly, his voice cracking under the immense pressure. "I swear to God, someone hacked the system. This is a setup. It is a fake projection." He looked desperately toward the front row, specifically at the cluster of Alpha Sigma brothers who had cheered for him just 2 minutes prior. But loyalty in that fraternity was purchased, not earned. The moment the scent of failure filled the air, the brothers physically took a step back, crossing their arms and completely distancing themselves from the sinking ship. Panic consuming him, Derek turned his pleading eyes to Harper. She was his golden ticket, the untouchable social media queen who could surely sway the crowd back in his favor. But Harper was a master of survival. The moment she realized Derek was a completely toxic asset, her sweet, supportive girlfriend mask dissolved. It was replaced instantly by the cold calculation of a brand manager doing immediate damage control. She stood up from her front row seat, clutching her ruined designer gown, and let out a dramatic, perfectly timed gasp of horror. "Derek, how could you?" Harper cried out, her voice echoing perfectly through the tense room. She pressed a hand to her chest, acting as if she had been physically struck by his betrayal. "You lied to all of us. You stole someone else's work. I cannot believe I ever supported you. I stand for integrity and hard work, and I absolutely refuse to associate with a common thief." With that single, ruthless declaration, she severed his social throat. It was the ultimate display of a purely transactional relationship. She threw him straight to the wolves to preserve her own pristine, innocent image. Down in the VIP booth, I let out a soft, dark laugh. Harper thought she had successfully navigated the blast zone. She thought she could slip back into her role as the righteous, morally superior victim. I looked down at my tablet, my fingers hovering over the glowing glass screen. I had zero intention of letting her escape so easily. "Let us see how much integrity you really have, Harper," I whispered to myself. With 2 quick taps on the screen, the giant projection behind Derek shifted again. The massive block of stolen code vanished, instantly replaced by a high-definition, scrolling collage of private direct messages and digital bank transfer receipts. The chat logs were undeniable. The profile picture belonged to Harper's verified account. The first set of messages displayed a frantic negotiation between Harper and the head of the Student Election Committee. She had wired exactly $5,500 to buy the title of Homecoming Queen, explicitly demanding that they alter the electronic voting ballots to secure her victory. The second set of messages was even more devastating. It was a secret group chat between Harper and her 2 closest friends, discussing the very fans who worshipped her on social media. The text was enlarged so the entire ballroom could read it perfectly. "I swear to God, interacting with these pathetic, ugly losers is exhausting," Harper had written. They will literally buy any garbage diet tea I promote as long as I pretend to care about their miserable lives. It is like taking lunch money from stupid children. The reaction from the ballroom was explosive. The students who had worshipped her, the girls who had defended her, and the loyal followers who had inflated her massive ego were suddenly staring at the undeniable proof of her absolute contempt for them. The stunned silence morphed into an ugly, aggressive uproar. The crowd turned against her in a heartbeat. Hundreds of students began booing, screaming insults, and throwing crumpled programs toward the front row. Harper covered her face with her trembling hands, screaming in sheer panic as her carefully curated saintly persona was violently ripped apart in front of the entire university. On the stage, Derek had completely lost his grip on reality. His future was annihilated. His social standing was dead. And when he looked out into the wild crowd and saw me sitting calmly in the VIP booth, illuminated by the soft glow of my tablet, something inside his brain snapped. He let out a primal, enraged scream, jumped off the edge of the tall stage, and charged directly toward my table. I was moving with the frantic, unhinged energy of a cornered animal. His hands were outstretched, desperate to grab my device and smash it to pieces. He was large, furious, and closing the distance rapidly. I did not flinch. I did not move a single muscle to defend myself. Before Derek could take another step toward me, Julian materialized from the shadows like a phantom. He moved with a terrifying, fluid grace that the human eye could barely track. Julian stepped smoothly in front of me, grabbed Derek by the collar of his expensive velvet tuxedo, and used the charging boy's own momentum against him. With one brutal, perfectly executed motion, Julian slammed Derek face first into the solid marble floor. The sickening thud of the impact echoed above the screaming crowd. Derek lay pinned to the ground, groaning in sheer agony, completely immobilized beneath the heavy, unyielding grip of Julian's boot pressed firmly against his back. Julian stood there, forming an impenetrable wall of solid steel between the chaos of the room and my chair. His face was a mask of cold, terrifying calm. The crowd froze, utterly stunned by the sudden burst of physical violence. In that defining moment, the entire university realized they had judged Julian completely wrong. He was never the vicious, mindless bully the fraternities painted him out to be. Standing tall amidst the wreckage of the elite class, Julian was the only person in that rotten, wealthy circle who actually possessed a shred of genuine integrity. The chaos in the ballroom reached a fever pitch. The university dean, his face flushed a furious shade of purple, was screaming into his walkie-talkie, demanding campus security, immediately secure the perimeter. He pointed a trembling finger at the digital projection and then at the struggle on the floor, demanding a full explanation for the absolute catastrophe that had ruined his prestigious event. Before the guards could even reach the center of the room, a tall, distinguished man in a charcoal gray suit stepped away from the judges' table. It was Marcus Sterling, the regional director of Axiom Nexus. He was not just a guest of honor tonight. He was the single largest financial sponsor of Aldridge University. The dean instantly quieted down, his aggressive demeanor dissolving into panic as he rushed to apologize to the billionaire executive. Sterling ignored the dean completely. He walked right past the frantic administration and approached the VIP booth. The entire student body held their breath, fully expecting the powerful tech mogul to order my immediate arrest for hacking a sponsored event. Instead, Marcus Sterling stopped directly in front of me, straightened his suit jacket, and offered a deep, respectful bow. "Good evening, Senior Analyst Walsh," Sterling said, his voice projecting clearly into the silent room. "I apologize for the disturbance. Headquarters just received your heavily encrypted report regarding the stolen intellectual property." The collective gasp from the crowd was so loud it echoed against the crystal chandeliers. The students stared in sheer disbelief, finally realizing that the girl they had spent the last 24 hours calling a pathetic, uneducated charity case was actually a high-ranking executive at the most powerful company in the room. Sterling turned his cold gaze down toward Derek, who was still pinned to the marble floor under Julian's heavy boot. "As of this exact moment," Sterling announced firmly, ensuring the judging panel heard every single word, Axiom Nexus is officially terminating your probationary internship. Your security clearance is revoked permanently. Furthermore, I am strongly advising the university administration to initiate immediate expulsion proceedings against you for gross academic dishonesty, intellectual property theft, and severe ethical violations. If Aldridge University chooses to keep a thief on their campus, Axiom Nexus will withdraw every single dollar of our funding by tomorrow morning. It was the ultimate, inescapable death blow. The dean vigorously nodded his head in agreement, silently sealing Derek's fate. Julian smoothly stepped back, releasing his hold. Derek did not try to run. He could not. His entire world, his massive ego, his prestigious scholarship, and his golden future had just been completely annihilated in less than 10 minutes. He collapsed onto his knees, tears streaming down his bruised face. He looked up at me, his hands clasped together in a pathetic, desperate plea. "Elisa, please," Derek sobbed openly, all of his former arrogance completely washed away by sheer terror. "I am so sorry. I was stupid. Please, just tell them it was a misunderstanding. You cannot ruin my entire life over one mistake." I stood up slowly, smoothing out the perfectly tailored lines of my obsidian black suit. I looked down at the boy I had once tried to love, feeling absolutely nothing but a cold, heavy sense of closure. I walked past his kneeling form, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. I did not raise my voice, but my words sliced through the air like a razor blade. "A bet is a bet, Derek." Across the room, I caught a final glimpse of Harper. The former undisputed queen of the campus was clutching the ruined, wine-stained fabric of her dress, sprinting out the side exit doors with her head hung low in total humiliation. She knew her digital empire was dead. Her position in the elite sorority was gone forever. The grand ballroom was still buzzing with shock, but I had seen enough. I slipped out through the heavy glass doors and stepped onto the grand balcony. The cool, crisp night air rushed over me, washing away the suffocating toxicity of the elite society inside. I took a deep breath, looking out over the sparkling city lights, feeling an overwhelming sense of liberation. The heavy glass door clicked open behind me. Soft, measured footsteps approached. Julian stepped up to the stone railing, standing quietly by my side. He took off his warm, tailored suit jacket and gently draped it over my shoulders to block the evening chill. There were no loud, dramatic confessions. There was no desperate rush to define whatever this new dynamic was. He just looked at me, a genuine, highly amused smile finally breaking through his notoriously cold exterior. "You are the most dangerous prize I have ever won," Julian said softly. I pulled his jacket a little tighter around my shoulders and smiled brightly into the night. It was a proud, victorious smile, marking the beginning of a brilliant new chapter. I would never shrink myself down or hide my true worth for any toxic person ever again. Thank you so much for listening to the end of this story. I would love to know where you are listening from, so please leave a comment down below. If you found today's story satisfying and enjoyable, please remember that YouTube has completely disabled our monetization, meaning we do not have the budget to upload new videos here anymore. We are transitioning fully to Patreon, so we desperately need your help to keep going. Please support us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon community. To hear the absolute best, longest, and most exclusive true stories that we simply cannot make public on YouTube. You can join right now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the Patreon link in the video description or the pinned comment. Thank you again, and we hope to see you there.